I'm Allie. Join me as I show you how to do this Rivoli Crystal Angel. It is a design that was inspired by Chris King in a sample that she sent me, and then I elaborated and made it into an angel form. There are so many different ways to do the bottom and the fringe and do loops and have her dress be very beautiful. So make sure you watch until the end of the video, seeing all the connection points, how to do the wings and working with it. If you need any of the crystal rivolis, the SuperDuos, or any of the crystal fringe, go ahead and check below the video in the description, and we'll put links back there to our website. Gather up your supplies and let's get started. All right, to start our angel, we need her head and her body. And I've actually already wrapped one of the 10mm rivolis with my bezel, and I'm going to show you the exact same technique to go around the 14mm. When we get to adding the 10mm to it, you're going to want to know that you start out with 36 delicas. For the 14mm here, we're starting out with, 26 for this one, 36 for this guy. So I have delica beads and 15 O's, some SuperDuos that we'll be working with to get our wings, and then some crystals to hang down fringe, some drops, and some little bicones as well. So the first thing we're going to do is take our 14mm rivoli and create a rivoli bezel to go inside. We have very detailed instructions how to do this on some other videos as well too. So I'm not going to take a ton of time, but you want 36 on the bottom of size 6 dragon thread. So I'm using some white dragon thread in a size 6. I have 36 beads on and a size 11 or 12 needle, and I'm tying a knot. Now, some people are going to say, oh no, don't tie the knot. If you're not exactly sure the size of your rivoli and you're not quite positive it's exactly 14mm, you can also use a stop bead. From here, I'm going to sew back through the next couple of beads just to get my thread and needle away from that knot. And what we're going to do now is do some peyote stitch. So the peyote stitch, if you've never done it before, is adding a bead, skipping over the one right below it, and going through the next one. So if my thread's coming out here before bead number 1, I'm adding an extra bead. So here's bead number 1, or actually my thread will say, let's say that's coming out of my bead number 1 where the thread is. From here, I'm going to add a bead, skip over bead number 2, and sew through bead number 3. And we continue this the whole way around until we have 18 new beads in. Coming out of bead number 3, add a bead to your thread and needle, skip over bead number 4, and go through bead number 5. You can see I have about 4 feet of thread on my needle here. Add a bead, coming out 5, skip over 6, go through 7. So see how easy it is to kind of get those little stair steps that are involved, and after this it becomes even easier because your lines are up and down. You're going to go through this first row, which is actually going to be your third row of your peyote stitch. Your first 36 beads that went on were rows 1 and 2. Right now what we're doing is row 3. We're adding a total of 18 beads the whole way around, and you're going to notice the pattern of 2 1 2 1 2 1 going the whole way around the design to get that first outer loop. As you finish with your third row of your peyote stitch here, you're finishing and coming out the first bead that you actually added. So I went back through that first bead that my thread was coming out of, and then stepped up through the first bead that I just added on that grouping of 18. From here, I'm going to start to downgrade. What I'm going to do is add a 15 between each of those 18 beads that I just added in my third row. As I'm adding these, it's going to pull this back into a little bowl shape. That is going to be what our rivoli is going to be held in place with. So this is going to be the back of our piece, going in, adding a bead, doing that same peyote style, adding a 15O in between each one of the 11 O's that I just put on row 3. So on goes 18 new beads, and these are going to be 18 of your 15O seed beads because they're smaller than the delicas. That's why we're going to start to get that basket cupping effect, as you can see, is already starting to occur. Go ahead and add the rest of your beads on 115 between each one of your delica beads. And then we're going to do one more row of our peyote stitch, a 5th row. After this 4th 15O row, the 5th row is going to put in one more 15O between each of the 15s that we're putting on this row. And just to show that step up again, as you go in and add your last bead, you're going to go through the first delica bead that your thread was coming out of, and then step up to do the next row, coming out the first bead in the row you're just completing. From here, it's really going to pull those delicas kind of back into that shape, adding in another 15 now between each of the delicas from that previous row that you've added. What this is going to do, just like we're doing on the 10 millimeter where we use 26 beads here, is pull those sides in to create a little track, almost like a wheel or a tire rather, to go around the crystal. So another 18 beads get added here as we complete this 5th row of seed beads. As you're finishing up this 5th row, you just want to make sure that all your seed beads kind of are going to the middle there. Go down towards your thread in your piece, and rather than pulling on your needle, pull on the thread there. What that's going to do is tighten up all of your thread along here. And you can see now we have this perfect little track for our crystal to sit inside of. Now, if you want to, you can do a whole nother row of your 15s, or you can see how your sizing is. And then if you want to, do your 3rd row of your 15s after going and doing some more of the piece. So you don't need to do all 3 rows of your 15s right away. 2 rows will hold the piece in place. I'll do a 3rd row then eventually, but right now what we're going to do is go back into the piece and we're going to start to add our wings. So how are we going to do that? We are going to sew from the front of the piece to the back of the piece along the peyote line. So you can see I'm just going right in a diagonal there, going through. Let me get the camera a little bit more focused here for you. Hard to see that white, I know. You're just going to take your needle and thread through those 11 O's there, pulling to the back. And we're going to go around one more time with our 11 O's. But what we're also going to do is add some SuperDuo wings. So go ahead and pour your SuperDuos out and get ready to add some SuperDuos there in accordance with our angel wings. So we are going to pick up a SuperDuo. We're going to sew from the last 11 O that we're coming out of and go through the next 11 O. So instead of having 18 seed beads that we're putting on, 10 seed beads will go on, and we're going to put a total of 4 of our SuperDuos on. Then we're going to give it a little rest, doing more seed beads, and then 4 more SuperDuos. So SuperDuos go on into the next bead. So you're still doing the peyote stitch. You're just making sure that you're putting the SuperDuos. See how the thread naturally wanted to turn there? You want to make sure that the thread does not turn. It's not looped around your SuperDuos. And add in the last one of your SuperDuos. Make sure, because SuperDuos have 2 holes, that both holes are open and that they are able to bead you or take your needle through them. There I have 4 of them on, and I'm going to continue my peyote stitch with my 11 O seed beads, going in and having a long pause here. Around and around you go. Now, how do you know when to switch back from your 11 O's to your SuperDuos? You're going to leave a total here of 1, 2, and 3 spaces of your SuperDuos before going, or 3 spaces, basically 3 sections, 1, 2, 3 there, space for delicas, and then count back, and these 4 sections here will have your SuperDuos. So they're going to sit basically to the side, and we're going to leave some room for our head. As I come around the project, I've added in 7 delica beads, and then I'm getting ready to put on more of my SuperDuos. And just like the other side, we're going to do 4 of our SuperDuos. So SuperDuo goes on, making sure the thread's not twisting around it, making sure that second hole is open, and then continuing on with that peyote stitch, adding in the SuperDuo beads. A total, once again, of 4 get added to this side as well to start our angel wings. If you have a bigger crystal, you can certainly make a bigger angel if you want to. And then here at the top, to finish off this peyote stitch, you have 3 more of your delica beads to add. We're going to go around one more time now and start to add our 15 O's into our piece. Now, where there is our wings, we are going to, so this finishes up that piece there. And we would normally step up through that first SuperDuo and then start adding our 15s to push our wings forward a little bit. And you can see that openings there. We're going to be pulling the beads down along the back, doing some 15-0s. That'll pull our wings back a little bit. We're going to jump and add some 15-0s. So we're coming out of our last one of our delicate beads prior to our wing. And we're going to add some of our 6 beads here and 7 and 8. We're going to add 8 beads, and then we're going to sew through the first of the SuperDuo, or the first of the delicas, excuse me, in that group of 7 that we added. And see how that just kind of closes that up, holds the bezel in. And then from here, continuing on with your peyote stitch, adding a 15 between each one of the delicas. So 15s to go between each one of those. And then when you're coming out your last one, you're going to do that line here of your seed beads and up to add in some delicas along the top. So you're basically still doing that peyote stitch, bringing the beads back a little bit and adding in those 15-0s. When you're coming out the last bead, that's when we're going to do our seed beads and come back up to the top and fold that in to go along the top. Now you can see it's going to sit a little funky, that because of the wings there. You just kind of want to massage it back into place, and then we'll pull it tighter too as we do another row of our 15-0s along the front. But it's going to look almost like a little crab. Good idea for the summer that you can make instead of your angel. But go ahead and finish up your peyote stitch here along the back for this row, doing your line of seed beads and then your seed beads there. After that, we're going to do one more line of our peyote stitch between here along the bottom and along the top, basically sewing back through the seed beads along the side. After coming out through the top here, where you have your top of your piece, you're coming out your last of your delicate bead. I want you to add one 15-0 to fill in that negative space before going back down through those 8 seed beads that sit along the side. That fills in that bead right after there. And then as we come through and we finish this row, we'll fill one in on the opposite side here. Coming out through the seed beads then along the bottom, we're going to finish up our line, making sure our thread's not twisted around, going through and adding a second 15-0 along the back. For your smaller rivoli, all you're doing is the 3 rows of the delicas, and then you're doing 2 rows of 15s on either side to do the head of our angel. The body here and the wing connection, a little bit more difficult, but also easy once you get the hang of it. Once you get the body, the head creating that is a breeze going through. You can see as we add this second row of our 15-0s in there, it really pulls it back into place and just continues with that peyote stitch. Just like we did along the side here, add 15, go back up through that same line of seed beads. When you're coming out that line of seed beads, add one more 15 to close up that gap. And then, into that last delicate bead. And that finishes off the back portion. The only thing we still need to do, go up through here, our 15-0, and just hang out and wait. So again, like I said, it's going to look a little funky along the back because it's going to pull a little bit. That's why we're waiting to do that last row of our 15s. But we're here along the top, ready to connect the top of our angel's head. Now, the top of the angel's head, so just going over it again, it is, 1, 2, and 3 rows of your, 4 rows of your delicas, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you immediately put on 26, and then you do a row of 13, and then another row of 13, add in 2 rows of 15s, then come over to the front, 2 more rows of 15s, and that is your angel's head. So you're going to leave this sit here with the needle attached, or you can tie off your thread. It's kind of up to you. You're going to do your angel's head. And now we're going to get ready to connect our angel's head to our angel's body. And then we'll work on the wings and the fringe along the bottom. Once the angel head is completed, then you're going to take, use a new thread and needle for that. You're going to take your thread and needle coming out the back here, and you're coming out between that 15-0. You've got 2 there ready to go to make a neck, basically. You're going to use a 15, a SuperDuo, and another 15. Let that sit right along the angel's body right there. And then we're going to get ready to add the head up there. So to add the head, you want to realize whether or not you're going to the left or to the right. So this one here should be on the right side. I'm going to connect to the head. When I connect to the head of the SuperDuos, you're going to count back to your 3rd row of delicas. So there's my 1st row of delicas. Here's my 2nd row of delicas. I'm going to count back to my 3rd row of delicas, pick up any delica you like, and sew through that delica bead there. And that's our first connection. From here, you're going to add another 15-0. You are going to sew down through the 2nd hole. So after coming out from the back here, you're coming out through the 15-0, and we're going to get ready to attach our head of our angel. Remember that the angel here is 4 rows of your delica beads and then 2 rows of 15s on each side. Same exact thing, starting out with 26 beads, then using 2 rows of your 11-0 delicas in groups of 13, and then downsizing to 15s, coming out to the front and downsizing to 15s as well. What we're going to do is, and I completely tied off the thread and got rid of the thread ends here. From here, what we want to do is we want to sew from one of our 15s over to the other one. And we're going to use these 2 15s as our connection points for the neck, or for the angel head. So I'm pulling these, oops, wrong needle. Nice if I was going through with the right needle. Okay, pulling through here, going through your 15-0 and coming on out. Add 1 more 15-0. Then we're going to connect to our head of our angel. I want you to make sure that your head is sitting correctly, because nothing's as sad as if your angel head was sitting backwards. We're going to catch on to 2 beads right here along the piece. You're going to go to the 2nd row from the front of your delica beads to make that connection. I want those sewed down through 1 bead, through the bead in the row that sits below it, and then up through the 2nd bead that's in that 2nd row. Coming out from there, add 1 more 15, and then go down to this combo here of your 15, 11, 15, and we're going to reinforce that connection that we just made. As you pull it together then, you can see the head just sits nicely right there. Going through then, coming out through the 15, going up through the bead, weaving around here through those 3 beads, the one on the 2nd level. You can either go back 1 row to the 3rd row, or come out to the 1st and then down again to the 2nd bead on that 2nd row of your peyote stitch. From here, down through the 15, through the delica bead, through your 15, and you can see I'm going over already towards my wings. Nice tight pull, and that gets your head secured to your body. So now what we're going to do is we get to decorate and make our wings bigger. So I'm going through my peyote stitch here. We are going to then go through the peyote. So we're down at the bottom of the wing. We're going to reverse the thread and come up and add our 2nd layer of our wings. Once you get to the bottom of the SuperDuo beads, and you can see I brought my thread through the last SuperDuo bead, just weaving through. I'm taking the thread and needle now and going through the 2nd hole of that last SuperDuo bead. And because I'm using white thread, you're not going to see it at all. You're going to add 1 more SuperDuo and sew through the next SuperDuo bead. Add 1 more SuperDuo, sew through the next SuperDuo bead. 1 more SuperDuo, sew through the next SuperDuo bead. And that gets your 2nd row to your angel wings complete. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can go up and through and kind of step up. I'm going to do a little bit of a gold on her wings, and we're going to do 1, 2, and 3 15-0s in the gold, and step up from the second, or from the second hole of the last bead in the group of 4 to the second hole of the bead that you just added. That just adds a little bit of gold on her wings. Add another bead number 2 there in this row. And then the same deal here. We're going to add a little glitter and glitz of some 15-0s along the bottom here. Stepping up to the top then. And I'll make her wings look like they're flying. Get one more bead in and to the other side. There you go. And then what we're going to do is the same thing here. So I'm going to pick up 3 more beads, cleaning up my bead mat down here at the bottom, and go into the SuperDuo at the end. Give a nice tight pull. Now to mimic the SuperDuo at the end right there, what we're going to do is do 1 SuperDuo bead, or sorry, 1 seed bead, and we're going to sew down through the bottom hole of that SuperDuo. So it just decorates the outside a little bit with that gold color. Push that seed bead up towards the top of your piece, and that'll allow you to get that SuperDuo to sit in there nicely. From here, sew back down through the project, just kind of reinforcing here, going back through. If you want to add gold the whole way along the angel wings, you can certainly do so. I've sewn right through the side there. This also reinforces. I'm just adding just the touch of gold wings. I like the look of the touch of gold. And from here, we're going to add through the bottom here. And I'm going to reinforce going through all of those SuperDuo beads. And then when we come out, we won't stab our angel in the head here. We're going to take our needle and thread over to the other side. You can see her little angel wing hanging out there. We're going to take our needle and thread to the other side, and we're going to make our other angel wing and make her look like she's flying with our seed beads along that outer edge. Once you have the second wing done, and you can see I'm just going down through the piece, pulling my thread and needle back down, mimicking the seed beads on the other side. If you want to, again, you can do the outline of the full wings. That's completely up to you. And now what I want to do is reinforce the center of the rivoli and do my third row of my 15s before we go in and do the fringe for her skirt or her dress. So what I'm doing right now is taking my thread and needle, and I'm going through my seed beads to get out to the middle of the piece. What this is going to do is pull this all in towards the center, adding a 15-0, and then going back to that peyote stitch, just going through the next 15 that's sticking up. So we're not actually doing anything other than another row of our peyote stitch. 15 goes on, you go through the next 15-0 that's sticking up from the very last row. Now you can get creative with this and do some more points in it if you want to. After skipping rows, adding rows, there's beautiful ways to go in and to change up the look of the center of the rivoli. Right now, again, what we're doing, as you can see, is pulling it in so there's an evenness before we go in and create our fringe along the bottom of the design. Coming in here then, we put our seed bead on and pull back toward the center of the design. So as you're adding your 15s, you want your 15s on, and then you want to pull back towards the center of the design. 15 on, pull back towards that center, and just see how that really brings it into more of that rounded shape, because your wings and your head pulling will just change it up a little tiny bit. So go ahead and put in your last row of your 15s there, and then we'll get ready for some of the beautiful crystal fringe along the bottom. After reinforcing our angel's center of her body here, her 14mm with our second row of 15s, I want you to bring your thread and needle, like I've done, to come out through the second row of the peyote stitch that first bead after the wing. And here's where you're gonna have a chance to kind of get creative. I want you to make about 1.25 inches of fringe. Now fringe, normally you're gonna get longer towards the middle. We're going to actually get shorter, but stay the same length. We want it all to hang right about the same length of the fringe. For my starter, I have a 15, 2 delicas, my 2mm bicone, 2 delicas, 2mm bicone, 2 delicas, 2mm bicone, 2 delicas, 2mm bicone, 2 delicas, 15, drop 15. Now I have this purposefully because it's going to be easy to take this and make it a little bit smaller, but still have my crystals all lined up in place. I have my thread and needle coming out towards the center through that last delica bead, have on my fringe. I'm going to skip over the last 15 and we're going to sew our needle and thread back up through all of those beads that we just added onto the thread and needle. Once you're back up through all of them, you want to make sure that you don't have a lot of extra thread showing. So when it comes to fringe, you can pull up, but see how it kind of stops there? You're going to press all of your beads up towards the fringe, holding on to that base 15 that's just working as a stop bead basically, and sit it down and pull that again. Do it one more time, making sure that you get rid of most of that slack of your thread. From here, we are going to have fringe coming out pretty much the whole way here. So we're going to sew up from that second row into the first row of my delica. And then we're going to sew into that second delica of that second row. And we're going to add fringe with every single delica in that second row. So I'm going to bring my thread and needle out through that delica and out through the project. And I know it's a little bit hard to see because of that coloring, but she is the perfect color for an angel. And now we're going to do our next fringe. When you do the next fringe, what you want to do is keep track of where it's hanging, because again, we want her to sit even. So you're going to do your 2 delicas, your crystal, 2 delicas, crystal. And what you want to do is just kind of hold it lined up. So when I move my little angel up here and I look at her feet or her little dress coming out, I want it to make sure that it's matching in length. So what that's going to mean is as you get center and closer, you are actually going to have less of the delica 2mm bicone. It's going to be shortened by 1 on this one and then shortened by another on the next and so on. And then it's going to get to a point where you make it big again as well. So here is my piece right there. You can see I'm ready for my drop that I always want to do at the bottom, consistent. I have on my 3 by 5mm drop. I put on a 15, the drop 15, with the bigger end down towards the bottom. You want to get it as even as possible. Run your thread and needle then back up through, and just like we did on that first row, go up 1 delica towards row number 1, and then bring your thread and needle into the next delica in the second row to hang your next fringe. So keep going, creating your fringe and altering your pattern so that way your drops all hang even. Once you're done with your fringe here, you have your 7 little fringe pieces that are going to hang down and are going to look like our little angel skirt. If you do want to make it even more dramatic with more crystals hanging down for her, especially if you're going to do it as like a ornament hanging from a tree, what we're going to do is we're going to get more intense by going back a row of our peyote stitch and hanging more fringe down. So I'm coming out the last one here. I'm going to reverse my thread. And now what we're going to do is the opposite. So we're going to do more fringe hanging down, coming out. We were in the second row. We're going to go to the third row and basically repeat, making sure that all of our fringe hangs even, just like that, because I want her skirt to be even. So here I am back a row, second one from the back. And just like we did previously, we're going to start hanging all of our fringe down, mimicking the front and making it so that way she has a nice, very full skirt. You can see I've turned it over just to go from the back and decorate the angel because it's easier to work from the back when you're going in and you're putting in more of those crystals to create that nice flowy skirt. Once you're done with that second row of fringe there, you can see if you want to do that second one, how nice and full her skirt looks. And the only thing we need to do now is get ready to tie off our thread, grab our thin wire, and we will get ready to put on her halo. So you can attach the halo with wire and using 26 gauge. I've actually decided I want it to sit as close as possible to my piece. So I'm using a threaded needle. I have a new piece of thread coming out after having burned off my thread next to the back of the angel here. I'm sewing through the soldered ring. And you want to make sure that you're using a soldered ring, because if it's not soldered, meaning it doesn't have that opening, the thread can easily skip out. From here, I'm going to sew that right down next to the piece, come back up through, go down through that same bead that my thread was coming out of. I'm just going to reinforce it, and we're going to do several times around the ring, just so that she's sitting right up in center along the top of the ring. You don't need to overthink it. You're just going back and forth through the peyote, making sure that as you go through it, you're going right along the thread edge, so that way it matches and you don't see any extra thread that you don't want to see. You want to take the thread through that loop again at least 3 or 4 times, just to make sure that you're not going to have an issue where by accident you have your loop come off. Once you burn off the thread of the crown right there, or of the halo, you're just going to need another jump ring, so when you're wearing it or putting it through a chain, it sits correctly. You can also do another little crystal there if you want to, or even set it down on the piece so that way it's sitting vertical rather than the horizontal. Lots of different ways to have fun with this angel, and thanks to Chris King for her inspiration with this little winged piece here, that then right away when I saw, I figured not the Flyers hockey team, but more so, or Detroit hockey team, going in and actually creating an angel with this beautiful little piece. Thanks so much to Chris for the inspiration for this beautiful angel pendant. Remember, if you do need any supplies, go ahead and look below the video in the description, and we'll have links there for you to grab the surprise at PotomacBeads.com. If you haven't yet, also make sure to check out our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Ask questions, join an amazing community of Potomac beaders, get inspiration and design ideas. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay tuned for more inspirational videos.